Humans have had a close relationship with animals for thousands of years. Scientists agree the domestic dog has been a trusted pet for around 15,000 years. And cats became part of the household from 10,000 years ago. And now it's estimated there are at least 600 million pet cats in the world. Exotic pets have also been kept for thousands of years. It's well documented that the Egyptians kept baboons as pets, and exotic animals kept in the home feature in many ancient texts. In modern times, the keeping of exotic pets has increased. A staggering statistic is that there are more tigers in the US alone than there are in the wild. Animal owners truly believe they are playing a role in preserving the numbers of exotic animals. But on the other side of the debate, there are those who believe it is a cruel practice to keep any animals in captivity. This series explores the issues from both sides, from those who know the dangers, but see the benefits, to others who condemn the keeping of exotic pets. Their stories follow. Standing next to an elephant is an awe-inspiring experience. There's a thrill that comes with being so close to a wild animal, a mix of fear and excitement. No matter how exhilarating it is, there's always an element of danger. Charlie Samut is the founder of Monterey Zoo in Salinas, California. It's because of his experience and incredible way with his animals that working not just so close to, but actually amongst the herd of elephants is even possible.
Christy, Paula, Buffy. There must be a convention going on down there that I wasn't made aware of. Hi, girl. Come on. You ever been in a stampede? This is the first time for everything. Atta girl, move up. Ah, what's going on here? Atta girl. That's gross. This is Christy. That's Buffy. Buffy was a carnival elephant. Christy was a circus elephant. They just both found retirement homes here. I do have to say, though, from the entertainment industries they came to us very healthy, very sound, very well taken care of. So they weren't what I would consider a rescue by any means. They were just done working in those environments and needed a place to retire.
Had it not been for Charlie, there's no way we would have felt comfortable enough to come so close to these potential lethal heavyweights.
Somebody once said that the day you get elephants, your life changes forever. And they couldn't have been more right. So our entire lives revolve around these elephants. If we're on a boat somewhere in the Bahamas and I get a phone call that one of them is down, we're on a plane home. Doesn't matter. Nothing comes before the elephants. They're literally your children. They're very demanding. They're, they are dangerous. When you first get them, you have to move into their lives very carefully. This is Paula. She's our old lady, and it's really kind of funny that she's here right now because she's usually so bashful. What are you doing? Huh?
Charlie started out in law enforcement with no ambition to work with exotic animals.
I was a police officer here in Seaside. We served a warrant one night and arrested somebody. And he had a pet mountain lion in the back in his garage. And long short of it, I ended up with it. I took it home that night. Stupidest thing I ever did. I threw a mountain lion in the back of a Toyota pickup truck with a camphor shell and took it home with me. I put it in my dog kennel in the backyard. That's where it all started. Hey, what are you doing?
Of course, once you've got a mountain lion, why not also get an African lion? Charlie did, and it would change his life completely. The lion turned out to be an extraordinary animal named Joseph, who led Charlie into a new career working with Joseph and other animals in the film and entertainment industry. Still, he certainly never imagined he would end up owning elephants.
No. Really? How rude. My personality does tend to lend itself to doing well with them. I'm, fairly aggressive, fairly dominant, and they respond well to that. They're very comfortable with that. So we've always done very, very well together. But I gotta tell you, we've had some horrifying days, sad days that, we've lost two, and it's taken weeks to get over. What are you doing? So I guess some could argue that this is probably my favorite place in the world. It's just one of those things where you can't imagine what it's like to have friends like this.
Highly intelligent animals, elephants form deep family bonds and live in tight family groups called a herd. Charlie is part of the Monterey Zoo herd.
Well, I actually do feel like one of them. So as soon as they get to me, they do what they need to do, they say hi, and then I'm just one of them, and then they start doing whatever else around me. The thought of them going out our driveway and us not seeing them again just couldn't happen. I couldn't imagine it.
Elephants are often seen as placid, gentle animals, but there's no doubt they can pose a very serious threat. Charlie's elephants are hand-picked in a measure that helps ensure the safety of his team.
We never brought anything here that we thought was going to be a threat to our staff. We do have one, this one here, who had hurt several people before she came here. She didn't kill anybody, but she dumped a few people, so she took a little more work to be around. So my staff doesn't go in with her if I'm not here. She's just a little pushier, a little typical, if you will. But she's also my smartest. She's my thinker. I saw that. What's Butch doing? Now, here's a good example. These were somebody's pets. They were getting expensive. They were getting to be a lot for them to handle. They didn't really have to get rid of them, but they called and asked one day if we didn't have a better situation for them. And the only answer I had was, we could put them in with the elephants, and if they got along fine. If they didn't, we'd have to turn around and bring them right back. That was, 10 years ago? And there are days we come out here and the elephants are resting their trunks on them. Now you're going to hear a lot of noise probably when the boy comes forward.
The mood changes quickly as there is a sudden commotion from the elephants.
Buffy back. Daddy Buffy. Christy. Easy, that a girl. Buffy back. Back. This is Butch, and he's what we call big. What happened is there was a tractor back there that spooked Butch. He obviously told the girls and they ran running over there to help him. Ah, you big dork. So you see, in a lot of the larger organizations, accrediting organizations, what we're doing right now shouldn't be happening. But where I come from in the entertainment industry, you're never going to remember knowing elephants from looking at them from a barrier in a zoo like you will today. You got to meet them to know them, and you got to know them to want to help save them. And so, hey, there's humans back here.
Charlie has worked with exotics for more than 30 years, and the trust these animals have in him is remarkable. Surely it must take a special sort of person to be so trusted by a herd of elephants.
I do think you have to have the right personality for it. But they're smart, so there is somewhat of a science to it. And if you apply the science, if you learn it and apply it, it works. We don't handle them the way we used to. It's evolved like everything else. It's a far kinder training now than it used to be. But for the most part, yeah, I'd almost say it's somewhat easier than big cats because they're so smart that it removes a lot of the things you have no control of, and you can actually apply a little tiny bit of trust. They're like a horse. You try to get a horse to step on you or to run you over. I had a scene once where I had to have a horse charge into me and knock me down. It took us days to find one that would do it. They just instinctually have no interest in hurting you. But on the other hand, they're like children. You have to be their parent before you can be their friend. So you have to find that balance where they respect you enough to know that they have to listen and they have to behave, but there's a reward for it, you know? And they're smart enough to learn real fast. It works a lot better that way.
Charlie spent years building up his rapport with his elephants, and keeping elephants is a full-time job. In fact, it's a full-time job for several people.
Well, here's the problem. We're working with them all day. They're working, their minds are being kept busy. 24/7, we're working with them. And if you don't, they start pushing you around. And then it gets out of hand. Then you lose control, and that's when they become real dangerous. Butch says, I just want to help. Huh, big dork. So, again, you can't go to work every day and spend what little time you have left with an elephant. You have to be doing it full time. You have to be doing it professionally for a living to keep them manageable. But on the other hand, do we treat them like pets? I think we treat everything like pets, but we do it professionally.
Spending so much time with his elephants, Charlie is completely at ease with them, but he's always alert to possible dangers.
Now, when they all went running that way towards Butch, and Christy was in the middle of it, I won't lie to you, I had a little concern there. That's a lot of elephant and very little Christy. So I headed that way. But once again, we've never had a bad day. We've never had an incident. They did just what I thought they were going to do. They ran to Butch because they thought he had a problem.
Charlie's closeness to his elephants is as much about enriching their lives as it is about enriching his.
The best mental stimulation they have is us. The second best mental stimulation they have is the other animals. And the third is themselves, the group. So, but they have a lot of things to do here. In the morning, my elephants deliver breakfast to the bed and breakfast. So they go up and they visit with people. Their breakfast baskets have bags of fruit that they get to share with the elephants. So there's the positive. That's why they walk up there with us and they're happy to do it. In the afternoon, People get to come and help us give them baths. And then at night, they go to bed. They get their treats and they go into their barns and they go to bed. So, this elephant is normally so shy, she'd be standing back over there, and I don't even try to make her come visit people. I have no idea what she's doing right now. She's obviously a camera hog. Paula, what's this about? Paula and Christy came together. Both came from Circus. Christy back. Christy back. And there were some things we've changed. Like in circuses, they're not allowed to touch things with their tusks. Whereas in our environment, it was okay. So it took a while to teach her that this was okay. We're far more lenient than they needed to be in circus. So, if you will, they get away with a lot more. But we just cut it off at a certain point so that we keep the control and we keep enough respect so it's still a safe activity.
There are more than 100 exotic animals at Monterey Zoo, and Charlie claims not to have favorites. Watching him with his elephants, it becomes very obvious that maybe, just maybe, he does.
Some might say they're the flagship of our zoo. A lot of zoos have elephants, but I don't know. Everybody finds their magic in a different animal. Some people adore elephants, but some people would get on a plane and travel here for nothing more than those sloths. It's just wherever you find your magic.
Ethan may only be a child, but he's about to do something many adults wouldn't ever consider. He's about to risk his life. Ethan is at his grandfather's rural property where cattle would not be out of place. But these are not your average cattle. Ethan's grandfather, Dwayne, raises about 40 Watusi cattle on his Utah ranch. Putting a 10-year-old within reach of an animal of this size and temperament is a risk. But for Dwayne and Ethan, it is a calculated risk. Also known as the cattle of kings, an average Watusi weighs around 1,000 pounds, and their horns are the largest and most dramatic of any breed of cattle. That's exactly what makes them one of the most dangerous. Even Dwayne is wary.
I can get a little bit closer, but this cow's getting ready to have a calf, and I know her. I get halfway over there, she's gonna chase me out. That cow there will just take her baby and run. This new baby here, her mother would probably let us go up to her, but they are threatening because they're showing you. When they have a baby, you respect that, okay? You do not play with their babies. We play with one here because we know this cow. I mean, she was bottle raised. These cows here, you know that they're not gonna let you play with their baby. These cattle through the years, because of a lot of times the predators that are in Africa, the hyenas, okay? The mothers have become very, very protective. This little cow behind us, she's showing you, she does not want you to play with her baby. And so as protective as the mothers are, the bulls are really docile. They don't care. You can take that baby, but with the mama, you're not gonna play with it.
So why does Dwayne let his grandson climb into a pen with one of these potentially lethal beasts? It seems a common theme among owners of dangerous animals. Familiarity breeds trust.
This little cow's name is Tina, and she was bottle raised, okay? And that's why she's so gentle. My grandson Ethan here, he raised her on a bottle. This is his cow. And she just had a little baby calf just 3 days ago. Do you want to catch the calf, Ethan? Now you can see the little horns are already starting right here. You can see some real good growth on them as a year old. They'll be a year old. They should be out, you know, anywhere from 8 to 10 inches long and have a base on them probably like that.
The breed does well in the Utah climate, and it is prized for its good looks, its robust and drought-hardy nature, and for those massive horns.
We started raising these in 1982. We've learned a lot about the Watusi, and you know, actually, a few years ago, we sent semen back to South Africa, where these animals originally come from, to get new bloodlines into a herd over there. We've understood that in Africa, they're after, you know, it's a thing of economics. Great big horns, great big long horns is harder for the animal to travel, to feed. And so in Africa, they're breeding the horns smaller. Yet in America, because we have an abundance of feed, we want our horns bigger.
And Dwayne certainly succeeded in breeding cattle with bigger horns. The world's largest, in fact. Dwayne's bull, Woody, earned him a place in the Guinness Book of Records for the largest horn circumference ever recorded. Woody's left horn far outsized its right hand counterpart, growing to a massive circumference of 40.5 inches. Although it didn't cause him any pain, it weighed so much that Woody would often rest it on the ground. Dwayne has also managed his herd to maintain the breed's distinctive markings.
If you'll notice the markings on this cow, she'll have this, she'll have the straight red over the back and the white down the sides. This guy will hold still. There are pictures of Watusi cattle on Egyptian walls. They date back 7,000 years, and they have this same design on them. And you won't find any other cattle that's got this design on them unless they've got some Watusi bloodlines in them. In Africa, you'll see a lot of the dark red colors. In the tribes, the kings, they liked the white Watusi. And a white Watusi is very valuable to them.
The herds were seen as a status symbol and played a significant role in tribal life.
In Africa, the more Watusis you own, it's kind of one of those things, I have more than you, or, you know, I have a whole bunch of Watusis, and it's kind of like money in the bank in Africa. The size of the horns are intimidating. I think in Africa, if a hyena come up or a lion came to a Watusi cow, you know, they're gonna look at that. They're gonna look at their defense first, you know, and I'm sure depending on what would happen over there, you know, but through the years, the Watusis have developed that real protective instinct to their young.
The Watusi's giant horns also help to keep it cool. Hundreds of tiny blood vessels cover the horns close to the surface, allowing heat to escape the body.
Where these cows originate from, they take the heat very well. And in the summertime, they'll slick right off, and they've got kind of an oily skin to them, which again, through the years, they've developed kind of a natural pesticide. You can actually rub them and brush them and smell the oil on your hands. They are a hardy cattle. In the wintertime here, because we have so much cold, we make sure that they have all the feed they want to eat, and we provide shelter for them. They don't have a lot of hair on their ears, and they don't have a lot of long hair like a normal cattle would. But you put fat on them, put some meat on them, and they do better.
The majority of incidents involving cattle occur on ranches and other sites where people are working with livestock. Hundreds of people are injured and 22 killed each year in the U.S. alone. Knowing the risks of accidents and that the cows can be easily provoked, Dwayne is always mindful of the danger.
There is an element of danger. It's the same as any other animal. You take a beef cow, they're going to protect their baby, okay? Some of them are not going to be as aggressive as others, okay? The same as a dog that just had brand new puppies. Some of them are going to let you play with them puppies and some of them are not. Again, maybe the breed of a puppy or the breed of a different cattle is going to determine how protective they're going to be with their babies. The Watusis, normally you got to remember that they're protective. You know, you notice how long the horns are and how big they are, and yet you'll notice these cows don't use them as like a spear. I've seen so many little tiny sharp horns do so much damage to people, and yet these bigger horns like this, they'll actually, when they want another cow out of the road or if they want you out of the road, they'll swing it and use it more like a bat.
While Ethan has never been hurt by his cows, Dwayne himself has learned some important lessons the hard way.
I had my knee replaced and I got too close to a brand new baby and the mother beat me to the fence. And she hit me. And all she did was she just hit me and turned around and went back to her baby. And that, you know, that's when I learned I can't move that fast. Stay away.
Like any large creature, no matter how familiar you are with the animal, its unpredictability is an ever-present danger.
The thing you always want to remember is know your animals, they're having babies, and they're protective. We have a couple of new babies over here. The one, the mother took it and left. The other one is a new mother, and she doesn't really mind if you're around her baby, but again, you have to know the animals.
It's obvious Dwayne takes great pride in his unusual herd, and he treats his Watusi with just the amount of respect horns like theirs deserve.
One thing to remember, if I run, you run. Yes. Please run slower than I do.
It may come as a surprise to some that the hills on the edge of the Cleveland National Forest, just outside of Alpine, California, are home to lions, tigers, and bears. Bobby Brink is the founder of Lions, Tigers, and Bears, a no-kill, no-breed, no-sell exotic animal sanctuary. The white tiger cub is one of their recent rescues.
Well, I thought I was going to be in the hospitality business. That's what I went to school for. It's funny, God sends you a different direction when you think you know what you're doing.
Bobby began working with exotic animals in 1992 when she took a job with a breeder and exhibitor. She quickly realized that it was not the dream job she had expected.
I met a guy with bears, and he taught me how to take care of bears, and then he would disappear all the time, and if I wouldn't go feed the bears, they wouldn't have food or water, and he'd be gone like weeks at a time. So I followed him one day. I followed him up from South Texas to the Texas-Arkansas border, and what he was doing is he would set up a ring, and they were wrestling bears, so you could pay $1,000 for the man to wrestle the bears, and then all the other men would bet who was going to win. I guess who was going to win, the bear or the man. And then I just, started seeing more and more and more. Because it's just amazing some of the places we go and the way people treat animals, and they'll have no fur from urine, and they're laying in their own urine, and they're drinking their own urine, and they don't see anything wrong. Like, they don't see that they're doing anything wrong. That amazes me.
Lions, Tigers, and Bears was founded in 2002 when Bobby rescued 2 endangered Bengal tigers. Only Bobby's direct intervention and negotiation with the owner saved them.
They were backyard pets. They were housed in a 6x12. No shade, no shelter. You and I couldn't live like that for 5 or 6 years. And the guy was threatening to shoot the animals if the U.S. Fish and Wildlife didn't leave him alone because he considered them his property, but they worked it out and he decided that we could take the tigers, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife gave us 30 days, and that's when we built that first small enclosure, because we only had 30 days to get the permits, cross the state lines, build something to house the tigers and get them here, and that was the start. We like to say here they go from rags to riches, because the animals we take here are usually the ones that nobody else will take. There's no place for them to go because we work all over the country with the first responders. I probably moved 400 animals, all lions, tigers, bears, cougars in the last 5 years to different sanctuaries across the country. So we work with a lot of sanctuaries, work with a lot of first responders, a lot of state authorities, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Fish and Game, even private owners, and we don't judge. If you have got an animal and you're in over your head and, you're ready to find that animal home, and 90% of the time, that's what we see happens with private ownership.
Seeing tigers for sale in a Walmart parking lot and at cattle auctions, and seeing big cat cubs used for photo opportunities, Bobby knew she was on the right path.
I went to one place on the East Coast, me and my friend, and the one photo facility had 22 cubs. So they can only use them till they're so big, and then they've got to replace those cubs with more cubs. So where do all the babies go? I believe some of them go to canned hunts, which is small area for people to shoot for a trophy, or they go as backyard pets. They're disposed of. Some of them are probably just killed and buried. There's no federal tracking of these animals. The lucky ones get to come to a legitimate sanctuary where they're not going to be bred and at least get their dignity back and live out their life.
The majority of animals Bobby now takes care of have been rescued from private owners and even from other sanctuaries. An appointment with the vet is one of their first experiences at their new home.
Most of the animals that we go in and get, they've never had any medical care, no dental. Like the 2 leopards we have right now in the quarantine, we've spent 6 months of medical, and then the female couldn't put any weight on her front feet because she had been declawed all the way around so they could use her for the photo ops. And so she was literally trying to walk on her back feet. So when we went in to do the surgery on her feet, we ended up finding a lump on her abdomen, and it ended up being a mass on her uterus. And so it just seems like one thing after another medically for her. And we're still trying to get her up here with the other cats, and she's been here a year.
And that looks like it's cleared up. So that's usually the best sign.
The white tiger cub also had severe health problems when first rescued, and after weeks in quarantine, her final vet check before going to a new enclosure is a great game.
Now that her lesions are coming back, we can do another fungal culture with that little DTM stuff. Have you seen it? It's like a special auger.
Bobby's 93-acre sanctuary is now home to a variety of rescued animals, and for many of them, the sanctuary was the first time they'd ever seen the sky or felt sunshine. This is the first time the white tiger cub has ever been on grass. But rescuing exotic animals is dangerous work.
Honestly, I think the first few weeks when I worked around these animals, I didn't think they were as dangerous as they are. I think the fear comes in after you experience, a few things. And I think for myself, the danger is when we go into dangerous places and get animals out. Because a lot of times the cages are so dangerous, we can't dart because if they jump, they'll go through the cage. Or people have them housed in their dining room or their garage or their basement. They never really think about getting the animal out. Like there's no way to get a transfer cage down the basement stairs or in their little gates. Our cages don't fit through. Those are the more dangerous circumstances for my staff.
Rather than send her staff into dangerous situations, Bobby often puts herself in the line of fire.
And when I first started working with the animals, I worked free contact inside the cage. I just chose not to get anybody hurt And a lot of times when you're rescuing animals, we don't even know, these animals' past, how they were raised. It's just better safe than sorry, because the way we've set up everything here is pretty safe. They work in twos. They'll shift the animal, which means they'll put it in an empty cage, and then the second person goes back and checks all the locks, checks that it's empty, and then they'll go in and clean. And then the same thing, when they go to put them back in the cage, they'll check the locks and then put it back, and then the second person will go back and check the lock. But that doesn't mean that human error can't happen, because if something happens, it would be human error. Somebody will make a mistake. That's why your buddy's so important, because that person has to have your back. These animals could kill you in a second. In a second.
For Bobby, the benefits far outweigh the risk. Sometimes an animal's rehabilitation requires a lot of patience.
Like we had one bear we brought from Ohio, and he was fine as long as you kept him locked up. Like when we brought him in the trailer, all the way across the country, we'd open the door and feed him, and he was fine, clean him out, and no problems. And then we brought him here, we always put animal in the quarantine and do all their medical, he was fine. But when we put him out in the habitat and opened the door to let him out, he was scared to death. And he'd just run back and forth and pace. So we would just open the door for 15 minutes, and the next day for an hour, and then, a couple weeks later for half a day, and until the door was just left open. And then finally he would touch the dirt, because he'd never touched dirt before. And then finally he would go out, in and out, make sure his little safety place was still there. Now he uses the whole habitat.
Bobby's priority is always the welfare of the animal. But how is her sanctuary any different to a zoo?
I think one of the biggest questions we get here is, why don't you give the animals to the zoo? And I think we do something totally different than a zoo, or two totally different organizations, but a lot of people don't realize these animals originated as surplus animals from the zoos, from the breeding programs, and that's how they got out into the private sector.
Bobby has strong views on the breeding and keeping of captive animals, views that have been established through many years of experience and first-hand knowledge.
There's approximately 220 AZA zoos in our country, and that's who holds the SSP plan, the Species Survival Plan, in our country. So supposedly this is the legitimate breeding that's going on in our country. That's 220 zoos breeding. It's a lot. And these are not animals that can go back in the wild, so there's really not much conservation value. The breeding is for the animals to stay in captivity. You can't put a lion or a tiger or a bear back out. They're going to walk right up to you for food. And I don't think a lot of people realize that these animals are not being put back out in the wild. There is no proven plan to put them back that's working. And a lot of them, they don't know how to be a tiger. I've brought bears in here that are scared to death of space. It took us 6 months to get the white tiger to walk out in the open space, because she had never been out of a 10 by 10, and she was used for nothing other than breeding. So when she came here, and there's the green grass and the pool, and she was afraid of the waterfall. So it just, a lot of TLC, a lot of time, and now she'll use the whole habitat, but it took a long time. One of the most important things we can give our animals is dirt. It's like the difference of standing on a tile floor all day versus standing on carpet all day. There's a huge difference, and it makes a huge difference in arthritis and how their joints feel, and especially when it's cold.
Seeing distressed and mistreated animals takes an emotional toll, and Bobby also struggles with the idea that even the sanctuary she offers isn't ideal.
It's just a glamorized prison. That's what it is. You and I wouldn't want to live in there. I mean, it's beautiful, but you wouldn't want to stay in there for life. When I first started working around the animals, I really didn't see anything wrong with the way they were housed and, people having them as pets. And I think it just grows on you. Like myself, I've been, working around these animals almost every single day since 1990, and it's really obvious they don't belong in a cage.
So part of Bobby's goal is to ensure that the animals live as closely as possible to how they would in the wild.
They don't make good pets. I think it's selfish. And that's one thing that I've questioned myself about. Am I being selfish by, wanting to have the animals, and I had to like get in check and make sure that there's a reason for every animal to be here. Just like the little bobcat that we took in Diego. If he could have went back out in the wild, that would have been the best thing for him. But unfortunately, he can't go back out in the wild, so he needs a place to live out his life.
Rescued grizzly bear Albert suffered from malnutrition that caused permanent neurological problems. And not all of the rescues turn out well.
They've destroyed part of his life. The MRI shows he has no pain, but he still has to really think and rock back and forth to get up, and then he has to really think, his brain has to think where he's putting his paws to walk. Of all the animals I have moved, I had to euthanize one lion, and that was very heartbreaking because it was just a big, beautiful lion, and he was literally dragging his back legs, to the point where he was open wounds, from drag. He could not move his back legs at all. That was hard, and it was really hard because he was in with 2 females. So not only did we have to euthanize him, but then we had to move the females out of their home. That was hard.
Bobby will continue to provide safe and enriching environments for abused and neglected animals already in captivity, leaving future generations to continue to ponder the question of finding a better solution.
I always tell my students and my interns, they're the ones, the younger generation, they're gonna make the decision. Do we work on saving the wild tigers in the wild? Because we only have about 3,000 tigers left in the wild, and it would be really nice to keep the ones that we have in the wild protected. Or do we continue to breed these animals for nothing more than to live in a cage? It will go to that generation, and again, they'll make that decision, but these animals, they live 20 years. So, I figure I can do this a good 20, 30 more years. And, hopefully there'll be some more laws in place to protect the animals, and there won't be as many animals in need of sanctuary. That would be ideal.
Humans have had a close relationship with animals for thousands of years. Scientists agree the domestic dog has been a trusted pet for around 15,000 years. And cats became part of the household from 10,000 years ago. And now it's estimated there are at least 600 million pet cats in the world. Exotic pets have also been kept for thousands of years. It's well documented that the Egyptians kept baboons as pets, and exotic animals kept in the home feature in many ancient texts. In modern times, the keeping of exotic pets has increased. A staggering statistic is that there are more tigers in the US alone than there are in the wild. Animal owners truly believe they are playing a role in preserving the numbers of exotic animals. But on the other side of the debate, there are those who believe it is a cruel practice to keep any animals in captivity. This series explores the issues from both sides, from those who know the dangers, but see the benefits, to others who condemn the keeping of exotic pets. Their stories follow.
My father was very much of a naturalist. I traveled extensively with him. My preference of abode is to be in the middle of nowhere. I like the outdoors. I like animals. I like to live amongst them.
Martine Colette grew up surrounded by wild and exotic animals. As a child, she spent time on safaris in catching camps that trapped animals for zoos around the world. As an adult, she decided that helping animals would be her life's calling. In the 1960s, Martine was a successful Hollywood costume designer. By 1976, she had 50 animals and had purchased 160 acres in the Angeles National Forest, creating the Wildlife Waystation.
I was probably the first sanctuary of this type created in the United States. However, my start was in Hollywood. It was fashionable to have exotic animals as pets. And my husband was in the motion picture industry. And so I got to meet a lot of the people who had exotic animals. And pretty soon, generally sooner more than later, they had issues with having those animals. And they would call the zoo and they would say to the zoo, I would like to donate my ocelot, my monkey, my leopard, my whatever. And the zoo will say, well, no, thank you very much. We have all the ocelot, leopards, monkeys that we could use, and thank you very much. So what do you do then? And then the Hollywood phone lines began to ring, and then somebody will say, well, didn't so-and-so marry some gal that came from Africa? And that made me an expert in every field, right off the bat. And I took my first animals in the early 60s, and they have not stopped coming into the 2018s.
Since it opened, the Wildlife Waystation has rescued, rehabilitated, and given permanent sanctuary to over 76,000 wild and exotic animals. Yet Martine still recalls the sanctuary's first acquisition.
Yes, it was a mountain lion. It was on exhibit at a show in this very small cage. I felt sorry for it, and I said I would buy it from you. And it wasn't until some months later that I realized that by purchasing, I was contributing to the very issue that I didn't want to see happen. And of course, we learned.
4 decades later, Martine has won many awards and accolades, and Wildlife Waystation is home to more than 400 wild and exotic animals. Still, Martine considers improving the lives of the animals to be her greatest achievement.
Being able to make a difference for however length of time to the quality of life for the animals. Animal care is always the most important thing. Animals require everything we require: food and shelter, and an opportunity to raise young, and an opportunity to be able to move, and an opportunity to be able to live a life for which they were designed to live a life. And being somebody's pet in a household is not necessarily giving them that. I'm not going to say a blanket statement that all pet owners are bad people. They're not. But when you look at the amount of unwanted animals that are exotic animals, you sort of have to say and ask yourself, maybe you should take a piece of the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. And I'll give you some examples. You buy a baby monkey, and it's the cutest thing in the world. I tell people, don't buy a baby monkey. Have a baby. They'll leave home sooner. You'll have less responsibility. Because while it's a baby, it's amazing. And it's all yours, and it requires you. When it grows up, it becomes a mature animal. Instincts kick in. Reproduction desires kick in. A man who owns a female macaque is fine until he brings in a girlfriend. And the girlfriend now has to compete with this macaque. The macaque doesn't understand that there is a problem. So sooner or later, it bites the girlfriend, then it has to be quarantined or it'll be taken away by the authorities, and the man then has a choice. You choose a girlfriend or you choose the monkey. I recommend they choose the monkey. I am not against the people. I'm pro-monkey. I want the monkeys to have a chance to be who they are and live a life that they're supposed to live.
Martine aims to provide the animals with a habitat and lifestyle that is as close as possible to life in the wild. But where many sanctuaries are non-contact, Martine doesn't discourage human interaction.
I believe captive animals should have human friends because they're never going to go out in the wild. And this is a controversial subject. Some people don't believe it. Some people do. I happen to believe it. I like the animals trusting us. When I want to look in somebody's ears, I want to be able to have them come over. I want to look at their ears. I want them to open their mouth for me. I want to see the rear end. I want to be able to give them a hand injection if I need to. I want them to be comfortable enough so that we don't have to tranquilize them as many times to do some basic performances that need to be done.
Those basic performances are usually carried out by the Waystation's resident vet, Rebecca.
I feel incredibly privileged that I get to go to work every day and, see the tigers. If I have a bad day, I can go and visit with the lions. To me, it's a privilege to get to work on them. But it's also constantly stimulating. Intellectually, working at the Waystation is physically stimulating. It's a lot of climbing and hanging off of things and working outside in this environment. So it's fun and different every day. I have two favorites right now. Bolero, who's our big male lion. He's wonderful. Although he marked me in the face not that long ago. I walked over there with my coffee cup because I go say hi to him in the morning, and he was snuggling at the fence with me, mooing, and then he just turned around and got me in the face and the coffee, and I was offended, and he turned around. Bolero, and then we have an elderly hyena named Gulliver, who is has chronic heart disease, and in the wild, hyenas usually only live about 10, maybe 15 years, but in captivity, we keep them well into their 20s, sometimes into their 30s. And we almost lost him a couple years ago, and we hand-fed him several times a day for months thereafter when he was not eating and facing death. And so I just got to where coming out and sitting there and scratching him, he's pretty special. This place has a unique history. And I like the idea, from a veterinary perspective, my mandate's very clear. We're not breeding, we're not exhibiting, we're not selling. I need to keep them healthy and give them a good quality of life while they're here. And that means I have carte blanche to do what they need. And as a vet, that's what you want.
Much of Rebecca's work needs to be carried out with the animals under a general anesthetic. After all, the Wildlife Waystation's residents are dangerous wild animals, and incidents at sanctuaries are common. In 2013, an employee at Joe Exotic's Greater Wynnewood Wildlife Park lost a hand in an incident with a tiger. In the same year, an intern was killed by a lion at a sanctuary in California. And in 2016, an employee was attacked by a crocodile in an Australian wildlife sanctuary. As you'd expect, Martine has strong feelings about exotic pets.
A lot of people like to keep reptiles. And by and large, reptiles can make excellent pets. They can. There are things like ferrets, and they're very playful, and they enjoy, and they have a wonderful time. So yes, there are smaller animals that make great pets, but it can't scare the neighbors. It shouldn't be able to eat the people. It shouldn't require such care that you are being cruel to this animal. The animal has to get something from it for their own life. It's got to be good for both parties. And yes, I know there are wonderful pet owners in the world. There are. But when you look at a whole, when you look at the entire animal welfare, again, I go back to my Hippocratic oath. First, do no harm. And if you cannot guarantee that every animal is going to be well and happy, then you probably shouldn't do it.
Although Martine is against keeping wild animals in captivity, she's realistic about the possible benefits of captive animals.
This is a very difficult argument, and there's lots of pros and cons, and it depends who you talk to. I find that most people, unless they have seen something, smelled something, touched something, felt something, basically it's not in their world and it doesn't mean a lot to them. I think children need to see the wonder and the magnificence of animals. They need to be able to connect to animals some way. And I know a lot of people will say, yes, but there is films and there is pictures and there is books. It's not the same. There are pictures of apples and there are pictures of trees, but it's not the same as an apple and a tree. So I don't know what the future is going to bring, but for the sake of the animals, I think for people to care about something, for them to protect the animals, they need to care about the animals. And to care about the animals, they need to be able to relate to these animals. They need to be able to identify with them. They must have some connection. Otherwise, why would they care? So I think it's important that we always maintain a connection with wildlife as well as domestic life. Whether that be wild animal parks, or whether that will be zoos, or whether that will be some other arena they will yet to be developed. But I think people need that.
And after 40 years in animal rescue, Martine also applies her pragmatic attitude to the future of facilities like hers.
Ideally, all of us should be striving towards putting ourselves out of business, ideally. But then there is the real. And I'm not sure it's going to happen in my lifetime. Perhaps it will, but I doubt it. I would never want to see a world without animals. I would never want to see a world where children do not live amongst animals. To me, it is absolutely critically important that people learn where we come from, who we are. We are a species like any other species. We're just smarter. But our roots are in the same place with everybody else.
The moment I met Allie, the moment I met Allie and the moment we started rolling around and hugging and playing and this and that, I knew that I don't want to be an orthopedic surgeon. I want to be whatever this is. I want to do this.
Bob Ingersoll never realized his ambition of becoming an orthopedic surgeon. And Allie would turn out to be the chimp that changed his life. Allie was the older brother of a chimpanzee named Nim Chimpsky. In 1973, 2-week-old Nim was given to a family to be raised as a human. The story of the controversial experiment was told in the 2011 documentary, Project Nim.
It was the most joyous experience of my entire life to be with chimps. And I knew that unconditional kind of a, one-on-one, the relationship, that the space between the chimp and you is a beautiful spot if you do it, if you understand it, if you recognize it. And I did pretty much immediately. And it was something that I didn't want to give up. And here I am 40 years later. I became a primatologist, and I have a master's degree in primatology from the University of Oklahoma under the psych department and an undergraduate degree in psychology.
The experiment, involving Nim and several other chimps, set out to explore the concept that only humans use language. The chimps were all taught American Sign Language. The chimps involved were more than just pets. They were raised as human members of the family. taking pet ownership to a different level entirely.
I saw them as my friends immediately. I mean, I interacted with Allie on the first day as if he were gonna be my friend forever, just like a human friend, no different. And it surprised me, because I thought it would be like a dog or a cat, or, you know, it wouldn't be like it was. And I can't explain that to you. Chimps engage you in a way that you're engaging me, and that I'm engaging you.
The NIM project drew a lot of criticism. Much of it centered around the way head researcher Herb Terrace saw NIM and his fellow primate participants.
He lived a hard life, and he got bounced around a lot, and he was looked at by the people of powers that be as the subject of a scientific experiment, as Herb Terrace says in the film. He never saw him as anything other, and this is a quote directly from him, anything other than the subject of a scientific experiment. I thought that was fairly arrogant of him.
Scientists' understanding of chimpanzees and of animals in general at that time was still emerging. Knowing what he does today, Bob would have done some things differently.
We've come a long way in the last 30 or 40 years in terms of animal behavior. We know they think, they plan, they feel, they have emotions that are very similar to ours in their context, but you don't know what's going on in the back of my head any more than we know what's going on in their head, and we can't think for them.
Bob was involved in previous similar projects with chimpanzees at the University of Oklahoma, working with Washoe, who in 1966 became the first chimp to be taught to sign.
I worked with Washoe and Allie and several other chimpanzees over the course of the time I was at the University of Oklahoma. You know, I saw myself as a scientist and someone who was interested in finding out about chimpanzee behavior. It didn't occur to me that captive animals have baggage that really kind of transcends that ability to collect data that isn't tainted by captivity.
Chimpanzees are unique in the animal kingdom. They're as intelligent as a 5 or 6-year-old human and capable of abstract thinking and planning. This often leads humans to forget that they are still wild animals, including some of the humans involved in Project NIM.
It was one of those baptism by fire. If you can do it, you do it, and you're good at it. And if you can't, you're weeded out fairly quickly. I mean, lots of people worked out there briefly and got bitten or got scared or realized it wasn't for them, or chimps are stinky and they smell like chimp poop and this and that.
The average chimp is 5 times as strong as a human, and many people have been severely injured in attacks by chimps. Although Bob and his human colleagues were somewhat naive to the dangers at the time, there was never a serious incident.
No, Nim never once bit me. He occasionally came close, like rolling in rough and tumble play, you know, but I knew when to slow it down and when to go, hey, Nim, hey, buddy, you know, and then calm him down and, hey, you don't want to bite me, you know, and my method is not, because I'm obviously not a big guy, my method was, you don't want to disappoint me. And that worked for me, you know, and so I was one step ahead of that. You know, I don't want him to react or do something that he would not want to have done, but sometimes they just don't have the cortical control that humans do. And so in the heat of play, there might be a situation where he goes a little bit further than he should. So I could read that, but he never intentionally ever tried to bite me or attack me or any of that. No, we were buddies, and that's not always the case with all chimps, but Nim was a special chimp to me, and I think I was a special person to him.
When the research project came to an end, the chimps, including Nim, were sold to a pharmaceutical testing laboratory.
I call this the Chimp Wall of Fame. So these are all chimp friends of mine. This is a a painting by, or a drawing by a chimp named Moja, one of the smartest chimps I ever met in my life. These are Washoe paintings, I think. This was in several museum shows, but this is signed by Richard Leakey, who did this painting with Washoe. So I've had an interesting and somewhat rewarding career with chimps. I don't know about the word rewarding, but more than at times trying and emotionally draining and very difficult emotionally. And some people couldn't stay in it because it was tough. It was tough to see this happen to your friends. But I don't know. I felt like I needed to do what I could.
Being friends with chimpanzees, you might think Bob would be willing to take one on as a pet.
Well, you know, there's literally millions of dogs and cats out there that need a home. You know, let's solve that problem before you go out and get a monkey. You know, we don't need exotic animals necessarily. I just think that you can get almost as much from a dog or a cat as you could from any exotic animal, and you don't put baggage on the dog or the cat. So I'm glad things are changing. I feel very, very strongly that that the emotional side of this is part of what leads into a situation like that, and like Charlotte Nash, for example, who was attacked by Travis the chimp. I think that you know, those folks are caught in a weird spot, you know, because they got their animals not in a malicious way or not with any bad intention. They just didn't know and were misled by a breeder or someone who gave them the animal, and then they found out that, oh no, that monkey loves me but not my grandkid, you know, and that puts people in danger. I mean, capuchin monkeys, as little as they are, they can put a big hole in you. And I've actually been bitten by a capuchin monkey, and I can tell you this, it was a three-legged monkey, weighed about 2.5 pounds, and it was one of the worst bites I've ever had. I actually had to consult my doctor.
When the NIM study ended and the subject sold to medical testing, Bob's life path was again decided by a chimpanzee. He began to get involved with animal activism in an attempt to save his chimp friends from what he saw as a tragic fate. Legislation passed in 2015 making it illegal to use chimps in invasive testing, and private owners too began looking for alternative homes for their chimpanzees.
You know, nobody wants a 3 or 4-year-old chimp, maybe, but a 6-year-old chimp you definitely don't want. I mean, because big chimps can be dangerous. They're not as fun, you know, because most people are looking for a child replacement. You've heard it, I'm sure, a million times. It's my baby.
That's a good baby. Her's a good baby. Her getting tired, isn't her? Those brothers are so crazy. Come on, sweetheart.
It's not your baby. That animal had a mother, a real chimpanzee mother. And to suggest that, like in Project NIM, I mean, Stephanie Lafarge was like, he's my baby and all that sort of thing. I'm like, no, he wasn't. That was Carolyn's baby, Carolyn the chimp. And when we took that animal, you're stealing that mother's baby. How dare us, you know? And then say that we're cross-fostering or any of that kind of stuff, which is complete bullshit. And I just don't agree with that. This is Sequoia Washoe's baby. He's a special guy and didn't last more than a couple of months. But he's right there. He meant a lot to a lot of us, and unfortunately, because of our arrogance, we thought that we knew better. He ended up not making it. This is one of my chimp friends, and they were drawing on the back of this, and then this chimp got it, chewed it all up, and they put it all back together for me.
Bob and his colleagues eventually succeeded in getting NIM released from the testing lab and placed in a sanctuary. He lived alone in that sanctuary for almost a decade.
that's Onan's footprint. You can see how big his foot was. That means a lot to me because I remember that day. I remember taking his foot, putting it on the paint, and then, come on, Onan, let's make some footprints. You know, so back when I hadn't come to the spot where I am now. I mean, like, here's Moja holding a camera, very similar to yours. And she was a great photographer, actually. She knew how the camera worked and all that. Nim had a Polaroid, so we would let him take, my idea was that we were gonna let Nim take pictures of his favorite places and then place them on a map or whatever, and on the floor of his enclosure, and then we would also have a book, and we would, you know, figure out exactly, because planning and that sort of thing in the 70s was not, you know, not something that we knew or understood much about in terms of chimps. So I thought, well, he wants to go to a certain place. Let's see if he can tell me where he wants to go in pictures and sign and all that, cognitive mapping and that sort of thing. But then the ethical issues started to creep in, and I started to realize that's really silly.
Nim eventually lived out his life with some of his chimp companions, and he died of heart failure at the age of 26. Bob maintained contact with him whenever he was able.
I feel that I am a lucky guy to have had this kind of experience in my life, and that not very many people get to interact with chimps on that level. And one day, maybe 200 years from now, people will look back at this and see me and understand exactly why I did it, because maybe all these problems will be solved and chimps will be, you know, in the wild and, you know, still there if the planet exists at all in 200 years. And they'll look back and go, wow, that guy was one of the last people to ever get to interact with chimps on that level. Not that I'm proud of that, because if I could go back now, I would probably, if I were God, I would go back and stop importation of chimps at all into any country and all that sort of thing, but I'm not. In the 60s and 70s and 80s, when there wasn't a moratorium on breeding and that sort of thing, now we're pretty aware of, you know, because captivity is the enemy. I mean, for all exotic animals. I mean, you put them out, you take them out of the context that they should be in and put them into a cage, that changes that animal profoundly.
She was crushed. It's like she just lost her husband all over again. I think that's how she felt.
I never thought it was going to happen. You know, I always thought she was always going to be here. I never had a problem with her. It's like an empty space in your heart, you know.
In 2015, not long after her husband Jim passed away, Laura Matson lost another family member, taken from her suburban Los Angeles home in a dramatic raid by authorities. Jackson, an 8-foot alligator, had lived with the Matsons in their yard of their North Hollywood home for 38 years. Jackson and Laura's story is an incredible account of a very unconventional friendship.
She was a gentle animal. I mean, she never attempted anything, but when you're raised with an animal, they, I think they know not to be aggressive or whatever, because she never was aggressive at all. So when she wanted something, she let me know. She just opened up the sliding glass door and walk on in.
Listening to Laura, it's easy to forget that she's talking about an alligator, a 300-pound apex predator that could easily kill her.
I would take her in my bedroom at night if I could, you know, but that would, someone told me to get a man. So.
Laura comes from a large family, and while she was struggling with losing her companion, Brother Ron offered unwavering support. He too had formed a strong bond with Jackson, the alligator.
Oh, I loved her. Good animal. I was aware, so you got to stay aware. I mean, it's an alligator. And we were just used to it. You know, coming out, getting into the pen, doing what we had to do as far as cleaning the pen and feeding the alligator was an everyday thing for us.
But while Jackson wasn't Laura's first unusual pet, Ron has never kept any exotic animals.
My sister, no. She's got every animal. All I had to do was walk across the street.
A little dog named Herbie. And rats. Well, that's because my husband had a boa constrictor and I had to save the rat. And then, of course, he populated. I had a raccoon, I had a quail. So I had a beaver. But I had to give the beaver back. But, and a groundhog, or one of those things underneath the ground in Thousand Oaks. Well, he was so cute, you know. But they needed special places. So now I'm thinking, no, a beaver. Everybody's trees are missing. And they'll be pointing at my house.
It was Laura's husband, Jim, who first brought Jackson home in 1977. Over the next 4 decades, the potentially deadly reptile became part of the Matson family.
He loved Jackson. He looked for Jackson, just like he looked for his 50 Merc. You know? So it took him a long time to find him. He first found a caiman, which is like an alligator, but he was mean. So he ended up getting Jackson. This is where Jackson lived for 38 years. Well, the first couple of years she lived in the house. Well, she was in the bathroom, in the bathtub, and she loved the water. She would get out, and finally when she was starting getting out more and more and more and going out the bathroom door, that's when we decided to give her own little thing out here. So, and she loved it out here, I think.
Most animal experts agree that reptiles barely recognize their owners, let alone form emotional attachments. But Jackson seems to have been an exception.
I think she really missed my husband after he passed because I would see her, she almost went into depression. I thought, Ronnie, something's wrong with her. You know, she's not coming out, something's wrong. And so he'd go in there, no, she's okay. She growled. But she was in there for a long period of time. She didn't come out. I don't know if they sensed something, but she changed a little bit because he wasn't there every day.
After Jim passed away, Laura continued to care for Jackson. Although she did try unsuccessfully to rehome their immense pet, to Laura, Jackson was a placid animal who never showed any signs of aggression. Not even towards her own pet cats, one of whom still lives with her.
They're not predators. I'm sure if they're out in the wild and they're hungry, of course they're predators. When they're well fed, they're a beautiful animal.
Laura may have thought Jackson to be a beautiful animal, but how did her neighbors feel about living so near to a dangerous predator?
Everybody knew about her, so even the neighbors across the street, everybody knew about her. Everybody wanted pictures of her. Once they saw her, they were fine. No one ever went and turned me in or turned us in all those years. Jackson was not a secret. And for some reason, I didn't think she needed to be a secret.
While most of Laura's neighbors felt safe enough having Jackson nearby, not everyone would be happy living next door to an alligator. Best known for her role as Mary Ann on the classic TV sitcom Gilligan's Island, Dawn Wells is one North Hollywood resident who wouldn't want a prehistoric predator in her neighborhood.
I'd move. I'd sell my house and move. I don't think I could talk them out of it. Remember the little ones that you used to get? Maybe you are from America, but you used to Circus. You used to get little tiny alligators and you take them home? Really? In a circus, yes. Yes, little turtles and little alligators, and people put them in their bathtubs. I don't know if they ever grew up. I don't know if they died because they weren't in their habitat, which is awful. But yes, you used to be able to take a little alligator home.
Jackson the alligator had lived peacefully in the Matson suburban backyard for more than 30 years without incident and without being reported, until a man passing the home saw Jackson and reported her presence to the authorities. Ron, recognizing the danger to his sister and her pet, confronted him.
I didn't handle that part too well. You know, he did what he had to do because he thought he was saving the community. I don't know how he really ended up back here in the backyard, but he did. She got a broken heart. He must have got some type of satisfaction from it. But,
know someone I didn't even ever knew. He didn't even live in the neighborhood. He went up my driveway and he saw Jackson, and he was right on the phone immediately.
I can't believe anybody could keep an alligator. You couldn't train an alligator to be a pet. If he wants to eat you, he's going to eat you.
2 days later, authorities visited Laura's house, trying to confirm Jackson's presence and to make arrangements for her removal. But their first visit to Laura's home saw them leave empty-handed.
the second day, I started seeing them trying to come over this wall over here. Then they tried to come over this wall, but I stopped both of them. They have to have a warrant. You can't just come on somebody's property without a warrant. How I noticed it wasn't good for us is because they had a car here, and on the corner, so like I told my sister, it's over. Okay, so I already knew this was the day, which ended up not being the day. They couldn't find Jackson when they came in here. So 3 months later, I said, I think we should do something quickly because they're gonna come back.
The report about Jackson claimed that Laura had been feeding her feral cats, and even some neighborhood cats had gone missing. When authorities canvassed the suburb, only 11 reports of missing pets were recorded over the previous 40 years.
Never aggressive, never. She was well fed too, so there was no need for her to look for food. And plus she was picky. She only liked chicken hot dogs. I tried to give her fish, I tried to give her other stuff, no way. She just threw it out of her mouth.
Local police and officers from Animal Control and U.S. Fish and Wildlife soon returned with a warrant, required to search Laura's property to find and remove Jackson.
I heard some commotion out here, and I just knew from the voices that something was going to happen.
They weren't going to settle for anything. Jackson was gone, no matter what. I knew it. I think my sister knew it. So, no. I'm not saying we broke the law, but we did get attached. So, they did their job, we did ours. Let's put it that way.
It was horrible, especially when they got a warrant and they went through everything in my house. I'm thinking, there's no alligators in my kitchen drawer. I mean, they went through every drawer. I don't know what they were looking for because Jackson was outside. I wish I would have thought about putting her underneath the house, but I didn't think about that till later. So, but they probably wouldn't have left because this guy took a picture of her. That turned me in, so.
Laura was right. This time, the authorities were not leaving without Jackson.
Once I seen the warrant, I knew we had a problem. I knew my sister was in here sleeping. I knew I had to get her out because they weren't leaving. My job's to protect her. And just one thing led to another, and next thing we know, we got them all over the property. The police officers, animal control, the zoo ended up coming. So
I had no rights whatsoever. They wouldn't tell me anything about her. They wouldn't let me see her. Nothing.
they came back. And they finally found Jackson, and well, we helped them put it in the truck, and off to the zoo it went. And then we set up a habitat for her. So she's doing real well now. Real well. Yeah.
Jackson was rehomed at an alligator park in Colorado, and a GoFundMe campaign was launched to create a new habitat.
We were the biggest donors. Okay. But she's happy, and we will get it back out there to see her.
Despite taking good care of Jackson since the 70s, by not having the relevant permit, Laura was breaking California law. But as any animal lover knows, losing a pet is hard, let alone a pet that has been your constant companion for nearly 40 years.
Now that they ran their law down how it really works, okay, I understand now. But at that point, you don't think about stuff like that. Even if they would have told me afterwards, I wouldn't have cared about that law. I just kept doing what I was doing. Because you get attached, and once you get attached, it's it.
I think she probably misses me. I'm sure she misses the chicken legs and the hot dogs. When I go to bed at night, I think of her because that's when she would make the thumping noises. And I miss that, so. But I'm glad where she's at. She's in a beautiful place, so.